Welcome. We are back for the 5th season of Fantasy Puck. I cannot believe the hockey season is just around the corner. We are now in late August and we're getting ready for the season. We have a ton of videos planned for you, just as many as we had last year. And yes, we are starting the Fantasy Puck Patreon League again. So it's going to be a very exciting year. I can't believe we're back. And the first video today, guys, I'm going to be going over my top 20 goalie tiers. This is going to be a good video, guys. So as I always say, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, guys, so to start this video off, again, I'm going to be going through the top 20 goaltenders in the league and tiering them based on where I think they should fit between S to D tier. So the hardest part about making this video, it's also the first video of the season. It's like my preseason. I kind of just got to get into it before things start really flowing. Secondly, the difficult part about this is all these goalies are very good in the NHL and they're very good in fantasy. But you got to remember that these goalies are being ranked relative to one another. So you got to think Joey Daccord relative to Connor Hellebuyck. Although Joey Daccord may be a B or A tier goalie in the NHL, relative to all the top 20 goaltenders, this is where I would rank him. So it's always difficult. It's always controversial. I'm very curious to hear everyone's opinions on this. And I may have a little bit of hot takes here. So to get us started with the first goaltender on this list, it's very simple. It's just like if I were to do the players list as well. The first goaltender on this list, far and above almost every goalie in the NHL right now, is Connor Hellebuyck of the Winnipeg Jets. I feel like I don't have to talk too much about how good he is, but he did win the Vezina Trophy last year. He was extremely good. At one point, I feel like he was rank 1 in the Fantasy Puck Patreon League. I did scoop him up in the 5th round, so that was extremely strong value, but I digress. He's the easy choice for the first goalie on the S tier. I don't want to talk too much about Hellebuyck because I feel like he doesn't need to be explained as to why he's so good. Moving on, the next S tier goalie, you may not agree with this because he didn't have that strong of a season last year, is Igor Shesterkin of the New York Rangers. Now, last year was not a very strong year for Igor. I feel like the entire Rangers team disappointed. And for me, I look at that as a value opportunity. When teams falter or they don't do well, and another good example, I'll get into it later, is the Nashville Predators. Their players always drop significantly in ADP, meaning you can get them at discounts. Now, the ADP is up for Yahoo. I don't want to look at it today because it's going to be updated once people actually start drafting. But with the New York Rangers right now, I do foresee a bounce back season, especially with JT Miller there. Now, they did lose K'Andre Miller, who was a very elite defenseman for them. But for right now, Igor Shesterkin is my number 2 goalie. He had the worst stats of his career last season, a .905 save percentage and a .286 goals against average. Far and away his worst season of his career. Now, he is a career .917 goaltender and a .252 goals against average goaltender. So that's career stats. So last year's falter will likely regress back to the mean. He has a 162 and 88 record over the course of his career. So a lot to love here from Igor. If you can scoop him up late in the later rounds, maybe round 3 or round 4, it's very good value relative to where he was going last season. Now, I have only 3 goalies on the S tier. You can probably guess who this is. I'll give you a couple seconds. Is it Gustafsson? No. So the third goalie in the S tier for me here is Andrei Vasilevskiy. Extremely good season last year. Vezina caliber. This Tampa Bay Lightning team going into this season is going to be very good, just like they were last season. They were actually my Stanley Cup pick because I thought Vasilevskiy was just going to steal the show, but I mean, Florida Panthers are the Florida Panthers, so we'll just leave it at that. But extremely good season last year, a .921 save percentage, a .216 goals against average. He's an elite goalie. There's really nothing to falter here with Andrei Vasilevskiy. I know he had a couple of rough seasons, dealing with some injury as well. But still, with Vasilevskiy, a very safe goalie to get a ton of starting volume this season. Now let's jump into the A tier. The first goalie I have here is Jake Oettinger. Now, Ottinger's borderline S tier. I do think in terms of like actual on ice play, he's arguably S tier. The only problem I have with Oettinger, and this may just be a Dallas Stars problem, is that his save percentage every season just isn't that good. Now, for thinking in a points league, he's more than likely to get the win each and every night. He doesn't allow a lot of goals. The problem is the Stars don't give up a lot of shots, and that's the problem with like the Carolina Hurricanes too. Is there's just not a lot of volume there from the Dallas Stars. Meaning Ottinger could have a really strong goals against average, 259 last year, but the save percentage 909 just isn't amongst the best where you want to see the S tier goaltenders be, which is like 915, 920. So with Ottinger's 909 save percentage, he was at 905 last season. It seems to be where he'll sit for most of his career, unless Dallas just miraculously stops defending as good as they do, and the save percentage will go up because he starts to get more volume. But a lot to love here from Jake Ottinger. Extremely safe pick. You know what you're going to get out of him. 58, 60 starts with a 250 goals against average and a 909 or 905 save percentage. Now moving over to the next A-tier goalie, arguably my highest owned goalie, my highest conviction goalie last season. And I'm going to add him in here, Mr. Darcy Kuemper. I did take a decent amount of slack. If you go back to my must draft goalies video, he was the number one guy I was talking about. I really, really liked him going into last season. If I'm not mistaken, he did finish top 3 for Vezina, although he did miss time. Myself and FP Sven, for those who are familiar with our Discord, we had a future on him for 1,400 saves. He finished just shy of that. But with Kuemper last year, he was starting pretty much every single game since he came back from injury. Had 50 starts last season, a 922 save percentage, and a 2.00 goals against average. He's in the same boat as Jake Ottinger, where he just, like, the Kings don't give up a lot of volume. So that save percentage, 922, very good, but the actual saves in points leagues, sometimes they're just not that good. Like, you'll see games where he'll give up 2 goals on 16 shots, get the win, and only get you like 12 points. Where you have Lucas Dostal, for example, who will, make 37 saves on 42 shots and get more points than Kuemper, even though he took the loss. So Kuemper here, very, very safe pick in drafts right now. I really like him going into the season, and he's my second A-tier goalie. Now we have a little bit of a Black Ace event here where Mackenzie Blackwood was with the Sharks and was traded to the Colorado Avalanche. This is a goalie going from literally a bottom 3 team to a top 5 team, and he reaped all of the benefits. So since joining the Avalanche last season, he ended with a 913 save percentage, a 233 goals against average, and a 22-12 record. I don't expect the Avalanche to be worse this season, maybe on par. They did lose Rantanen, which is honestly a huge loss for them, but they gained Nelson. They also got Martin Necas. So I think the Avalanche, again, are still going to be extremely competitive. They have 2 of arguably the top 3 players in the NHL. So a lot to like here from Blackwood. Should see a bulk of the starts, just a matter of if he can stay healthy. And Colorado loves to roll their starting goaltenders. So the experiment failed with Georgiev. And they're hoping it works out here with Blackwood. In their short stint, he was very, very good. Now, lastly, this is a borderline A-tier goaltender. It was hard to give really any other goalie an A-tier status. You could argue Bobrovsky, you could argue Markstrom, Saros, but for me, I'm going to give it to Philip Gustafsson. Again, this could be very close to a B-tier goalie, but I'm going to include him in the A-tier to spread things out a little bit here. He broke out last season, had a career-high 58 starts, a 914 save percentage, a 257 goals against average. The Wild are a very good team. They were without their best player for a good portion of last season in Kirill Kaprizov. Again, he's a guy that just can't stay healthy, but if he does stay healthy for a full 82, I think Minnesota should be a top 10 team this year. They have Zeev Buium coming up this season, should be their power play 1 quarterback, and that just allows Faber to play on the defensive side of the puck. They also dealt with a Joel Eriksson Ek injury, so I know although we didn't see a fully healthy Minnesota roster, Gustafsson was still relatively strong. The only thing I want to talk about is the Jesper Wallstedt conundrum. So he's an unproven goaltender. Fleury's not there anymore. He retired. So I'm not sure what we're going to see out of Wallstedt, but I can't see them giving it a 60-40 start share. I can probably see a 70-30 or 75-25% start share. And it's my guess that Gustafsson will likely just take over the net and run with it this season. Now, jumping over to the B tier, a lot of people who drafted Saros last season probably wasn't too happy with the outcome. A 20-31 record, a sub-9 save percentage for a goalie that has been one of the biggest workhorse goalies in the entire NHL. So prior to last season, the 3 seasons before that, he started 67, 64, and 64 games. So Saros is an absolute workhorse goalie. I can see the Nashville Predators bouncing back. you have to think just from like a logical standpoint, from a hockey logic standpoint. When a team gets a bunch of new players that are new to a system and they move up in the top six and they're playing the top power play unit, it's going to take time for them to figure it out. Now, they may be without Roman Josi to start the season, which would be a huge hit. But the reason why I love Saros so much is because he is a volume goaltender, which is beneficial in both Cats and extremely beneficial in points leagues. He should be good for 1,600 plus saves this season. He should be good for 60 plus starts. He's barely injured in his career. He's a volume king, arguably the highest volume of any goaltender on this list right now. So that's why Saros is B tier. He could be an A tier, but I think the sub 9 save percentage and just the questions surrounding the Nashville Predators team kind of sparks a little bit of red flags for me. So I'm very curious if you're paying attention to this point in the video. I'm curious to what you think about the Nashville Predators going into next season and where you see Saros fitting in this list. Now, moving on to the next B tier goalie, we have Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames. So I did say in the Gustafsson bit, Jesper Wallstedt was an unproven goaltender. So was Dustin Wolf. But the difference between the two is that Wallstedt's coming into a system where they already have a proven starting goalie, whereas Wolf went into last year with basically, here's your net, take it and run with it. And that's the same thing going into this season. He has the upside to potentially be the next UC Saros. I mean, they are very similar. They're short goaltenders, very quick movement. So with Wolf here, their backup going into this season is Devin Cooley, not Logan Cooley, Devin Cooley, meaning that they're just telling Dustin Wolf, this is your net. You're going to get all the volume this season and prove your worth to us. So I can see them being a bubble playoff team again this season. They were very close to making the playoffs. And Dustin Wolf should likely get 60 plus starts with a ton of volume on the Calgary Flames. So a lot to like there for Dustin Wolf. The next goalie for me is a very surprising one last season. When I looked into his stats, I'm not going to lie, I actually did end up taking Sorokin in multiple leagues last season. But there's a lot to like from Sorokin this year. So he was like questionable to start the season last year, if you remember. And I was kind of telling people like maybe you should look at Varlamov. We weren't sure about his status, but started the season and ended up making 61 starts. That was very surprising for me. But he ended the season with a very modest 269 goals against average and 907 save percentage. Should be good value this season. You should be able to take him in the maybe late 8th to 12th rounds. Again, we don't know how ADP is panning out right now. But if people are scared about the Islanders, and you may think, for those who may not know hockey, because they had the first overall pick, they might think the Islanders just aren't good teams and be scared away from Sorokin. But for me, I'm going to be drafting him this season for sure as a sleeper pick if he falls in drafts. But 61 starts last season is extremely good, and there's not much help behind him there on the Islanders team. Now, moving on, I wasn't sure where to rank him, Adin Hill of the Vegas Golden Knights. I just wasn't sure because last season was the highest starts of his career with 50, his first time being a starting goaltender. But his stats proved me otherwise. A 247 goals against average, 32-13 record, and a 906 save percentage. I hope it's not a 906 goals against average. Should be very good in Cats leagues. My only worry is just him in the points leagues, where he just doesn't get a ton of volume because Vegas is such a well-structured defensive team. They are losing Pietrangelo, but I mean, they did get Mitch Marner, who we know is a strong defensive forward. He kills penalties, plays on the top power play unit. Leafs fans may not like that, but still with Hill here, very solid category league goaltender. Seems to always be good value in drafts, and I feel like B tier is a perfect fit for him. Now moving on, we have the St. Louis Blues starting goaltender in Jordan Binnington, and I have to say, Canada's hero. Like what a machine last season. That was so beautiful to watch. But the St. Louis Blues basically came out of nowhere and were the best second half team. It seemed like Binnington gained a ton of confidence since the Four Nations, and from then on they went on this miraculous run, and they actually took Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, to Game 7 OT. That was a little bit ago, but still, a lot to like here from Binnington. My only concern is the save percentage kind of lacks every season, and also Joel Hofer is arguably one of the strongest backup goaltenders in the league. Like, I think if they were to get rid of Binnington and Hofer were to take over this year, it wouldn't be much of a concern for them. But Binnington's very clutch. Had a 269 goals against average and a 900 save percentage. Usually where he sits, like 260 to 270 goals against, and then like a 900 to 910 save percentage. But if we think the Blues are going to be a bit better this season, Binnington could potentially end up in that A tier at some point. But for right now, we're going to keep him in the B tier. So I got two more goaltenders in here. You can probably guess who they are. Up next, we have Jacob Markstrom. He's like one of my favorite fantasy goalies every single season. It's just like I want to see that 61, 62 start year from Markstrom, but he's getting older, so that's likely a thing of the past. But he did miss some time last season. He played just 49 games. The same thing that happens with the Devils every single year. Dougie Hamilton gets injured. Luke Hughes gets injured. Jack Hughes gets injured. They just can't seem to have a full lineup for an entire season. They always have so many man games lost. But assuming this team is going to be relatively healthy, a lot of the young core beginning to mature and get a bit older, it should only help the case with Markstrom there. They'll look to contend again this season. A lot to like for Markstrom, a 250 goals against average and a 900 save percentage. Similar to the other goalies I've talked about, where the Devils don't give up a ton of volume, so that save percentage tends to lack. But Markstrom, again, similar to Binnington and Hill, Sorokin, like a lot of these B tier guys could end up in the A tier. But for now, I'm going to conservatively put him in the B tier. The last goalie for the B tier is Sergei Bobrovsky of the Florida Panthers, the ageless wonder, similar to Crosby, 36 years old this season, back-to-back Stanley Cups, continues to play a decent amount of games. The reason why he's not in the A tier, and I'm feel like Rick from Red Deer is just punching the computer right now, punching the screen. Why is he not in A tier? Now, my concern is just the volume. And last season, he only had 1,247 saves, which is the lowest he's had since the COVID season. And before that, it was with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where he started just 37 games. So the sub 1,300 saves last season kind of concerns me from a save percentage standpoint, and also in the points league because you're pretty reliant on volume. But a 244 goals against average, a 906 save percentage. The Panthers are going to be without Matthew Tkachuk for 3 to 5 months, which is a huge hit up front. But we know the depth of this team. They got Marchand. They got Seth Jones this year. They're going to be extremely strong again. Very good defensive team. So a lot to like from Bobrovsky. Moving on, we have our C tier. Now, the first goalie in the C tier is going to be Linus Ullmark. And I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to hear the answer very shortly after. But how many seasons do you think Linus Ullmark has had 50 plus starts? I'll give you a couple seconds. The answer is 0. He has never started more than 50 games in the season. Now, on ice, he may in fact be an A tier goaltender, but in fantasy, it's difficult to justify a goalie being in B tier and above when he hasn't even started more than 50 games in a season in his whole career. So when he's healthy, he shows signs of dominance. He just can't stay healthy, can't keep the crease for a long time. A 275 goals against average, a 910-ish save percentage. That's likely what you should be looking for this season. I assume the Ottawa Senators will be a bubble playoff team this year. I still don't see them, making that jump to being ultra competitive. But I still really like the team. I think for Ullmark here, he's a safe C tier pick. Probably a guy you draft as your goalie 2. I can't really say that you can draft him as your goalie 1 safely. Moving on, we have Logan Thompson of the Washington Capitals. Another reason why he's here, again, it's just the volume aspect. He did have the best win percentage of all goaltenders last season at 31-6 record, a 262 goals against average and a 910 save percentage. It's more than likely they continue with a 50-50 split. You just have to answer the question of, do you think the Washington Capitals are a legit team or not? And last year, I'm telling you, last year, I was saying nonstop, there's no way they're going to be this good. There's no way they're going to keep this up. But the OV goal chase was phenomenal to watch, and the team behind them was even better. So not many changes from a Capitals standpoint in terms of roster construction. An older Ovechkin, not really many differences. So I think here he's a safe pick in the C tier, just lack of volume. If he started 60 games last year and kept up these counting stats, sure, he'll be higher. But I think for now, the lack of volume just puts him in the C tier. Moving on, we have Anthony Stolarz of the Toronto Maple Leafs. For him, I was a little bit surprised by his games played. I want you to think in your head like where you would put him for games played. 34 last season. So it was a little bit concerning. There was some injuries. And I think with Joseph Woll, he's a very solid 1B. Stolarz is definitely the 1A given how good his season was last year. 21-8 record, a 214 goals against average, a 926 save percentage. He had back-to-back seasons with really, really good counting stats. So in category leagues, he is a B to A tier goalie. In points leagues, he's probably C to D tier. It's just a matter of volume. With no Mitch Marner, I have no clue how this Leafs team will shape out this year. They're a pretty big question mark team going into this season, but I do think they'll still be extremely competitive, and I can safely put Stolarz in the C tier. Moving on, we have Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. What a nightmare year for that Bruins team. Like, he wasn't signed going into the season. I was hyping up Korpisalo. The Bruins, historically, very good goaltending every single season. But Swayman last year, his first year as a starting goalie after holding out 58 starts, a 311 goals against average, and an 892 save percentage. But I think for this year, although the Bruins won't be as competitive, they lost some key pieces, Marchand included, with McAvoy hopefully healthy for a good portion of this year. He'll look to regress back to the mean, back to his 270-ish goals against average, his 910 save percentage stats. I don't think the Bruins are going to be a playoff team this year. They may be a bubble playoff team, although they don't have a ton of talent up front. They always seem to be somewhat competitive. So I still don't mind the Bruins. I just think that Swayman, I can safely put him in the C tier here. And the last two goalies, Joey Daccord up next. To me, one of the biggest sleepers going into the season. 57 starts last season, solidified himself as the Kraken's #1 goaltender in front of Philip Grubauer. The Kraken, I don't think, could be a top 10. I don't even know if they can be a top 15 team going into the season. They didn't make any significant changes. But he's the #1 goaltender, should see a ton of volume this season, had over 1,400 saves last year. So a lot to like from Daccord as a safe C-tier pick, definitely a safe goalie too for your fantasy drafts. Lastly, Frederik Andersen. Do I put him in the D tier, guys? I'll put him in the D tier. I initially had him in the C tier, but I'm going to put him in the D tier for this. Now, the thing with Freddie, as I always say, as everybody always says, he just needs to be healthy for a full season. So last year, I want you to guess. I'm making you guys guess a decent amount. How many starts were Freddie Andersen last year? 40, 35, 22 starts last season. 72 starts since 2022. So health, again, continues to be a concern for Freddie Andersen. When he gets injured, if you're taking Freddie Andersen fantasy drafts, you got to draft Peter Kochetkov as well, because if Freddie gets hurt, Kochetkov takes over the net and vice versa. So with Freddie here, a 240 goals against average, a 905 save percentage. The goals against average will always be very good. The win percentage will always be very strong. The save percentage tend to lack, similar to the Dallas Stars, similar to the Vegas Golden Knights, where they just don't give up a lot of shots, and the goalie's save percentage lacks because of that. But for Freddie Andersen, he's a D-tier goalie. He's the worst of the top 20 here, but still, in my eyes, if healthy, could easily be a top 10 goaltender. He just needs to play the full season behind this extremely strong Carolina team. They always finish top 3 in all defensive metrics, so they're a very good team overall, and you always want to be drafting goalies on good teams. But for Freddie here, it's just a matter of him staying healthy. I know I've said it about 36 times, but let me know who else you think should be on this list. There were some honorable mentions. Sam Montembeault could potentially be on here. Thatcher Demko, Stuart Skinner maybe, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen were goalies I initially had, but had to take out because I wanted to keep it to a top 20 list. But let me know who else you think. Let me know what tiers you think other goalies should be in. This is a very subjective list. Again, relative to the top 20, these are how I rank the goaltenders. We have our S tier, our A, our B, our C, and our D. Let me know who you think you'd flip around, who could potentially be where, and argue some of my points, guys. I love the comments. I love chatting with you guys. So yeah, that will conclude the video. Thank you so much for watching the goalie tier video. This is a very subjective video, but I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comment section below any changes you would have to my current list. This will be updated as the preseason progresses and as we find out more information about goaltenders. But I'm super excited to kick off the start of Season 5 of Fantasy Puck, the 2025-26 NHL season. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.